There is a type of crisis that every major organization fears. Not when it gets sued, not when revenue declines, not when the media turns critical, but when the people who once loved it the most begin to question it. For decades, the World Cup has been more than just a football tournament. It has been the world's biggest celebration, a collection of childhood memories, a moment when the entire planet pauses to watch the same pitch. But as the 2026 World Cup draws closer, a different feeling is beginning to emerge. Not loud, not explosive, not the kind of controversy that dominates headlines every day, but noticeable enough to raise concerns. Across social media, more and more discussions are appearing about ticket prices, fan experiences, and whether this tournament still truly belongs to everyone. Some supporters are canceling their plans to attend. Others say they have never felt more disconnected from the World Cup than they do right now. What makes this particularly interesting is that the reaction is not centered solely on politics or off-field controversies. It is about feeling welcome, feeling respected, and feeling that fans still matter in the biggest sporting event on Earth. Because when supporters begin asking themselves whether they should attend the World Cup at all, that is no longer an ordinary debate. It is a signal that something may be changing. And before we rush to decide who is right and who is wrong, it is worth taking a closer look at what is really happening behind this growing wave of discussion. Because the story of the 2026 World Cup may not be just about a tournament, it may be about the future of modern football itself. If you love the World Cup and have followed this competition for years, stay with us until the end of this video. Because what we are about to uncover may change the way you see World Cup 2026. To better understand what this growing sense of unease really looks like, we need to step away from the statistics, the headlines, and the hashtags, and focus on one individual story. Among thousands of posts circulating across social media, one particular message spread with remarkable speed. It did not come from a political activist. It did not come from a journalist known for criticizing FIFA. It came from someone who had already purchased a ticket. The author was a senior official connected to an international organization, someone accustomed to working in multinational environments, someone who regularly travels across borders without difficulty. And yet, he decided to cancel his trip to the 2026 World Cup. His reason had nothing to do with football. It had nothing to do with ticket prices either. He explained that he was concerned about potential risks at the border. Concerned that because of his appearance or background, he could be stopped for questioning, or even temporarily detained while authorities clarified his status. It was not an accusation. It was a risk assessment. He was not calling for a boycott. He was not urging others to do the same. He simply said that after weighing the situation carefully, he no longer felt comfortable enough to make the journey. The post was shared hundreds of thousands of times. But what made it significant was not its reach. It was what it seemed to represent. If someone with international experience, professional status, and a strong understanding of legal systems still felt the need to stop and ask whether traveling would be worth the risk, what might that say about the concerns of ordinary supporters? Of course, one story does not speak for everyone. Millions of fans still plan to attend the tournament. Millions remain excited for what could become the largest World Cup ever staged. But stories like this have begun to raise a broader question. Is this anxiety simply a temporary reaction fueled by online discussions? Or is it a sign of something deeper taking shape beneath the surface? Because once we place this personal story into a much larger picture, a pattern begins to emerge. And that pattern revolves around three major concerns that are increasingly appearing in conversations about World Cup 2026. The first concern, and perhaps the most controversial one, revolves around safety and immigration. Over the past several months, more than 100 civil society and human rights organizations have raised concerns about the legal environment and entry policies in one of the host nations. These concerns are not broad speculation. They focus on the possibility of arbitrary entry denials, extended inspections at border crossings, or different treatment based on nationality, appearance, or language. What makes the issue especially sensitive is the broader global climate. Across many countries, immigration policies are becoming more restrictive. Regulations can change quickly, and in an environment like that, uncertainty itself becomes a risk. For supporters from countries facing travel restrictions, the situation can feel even more straightforward. Their national team may have earned a place at the World Cup through talent and determination, yet the fans who have supported that team for years may face barriers that football itself cannot overcome. For many people, the World Cup is not simply a sporting event. It is the trip of a lifetime, a dream planned years in advance, a goal that requires saving money little by little over time. When that dream suddenly enters a state of uncertainty, emotions begin to change. What is particularly striking is that many of the people expressing concern are not speaking with anger. They are speaking with caution. They are calculating. They are weighing risks against rewards. And when some decide not to attend, they are not necessarily making a political statement. They are making what they believe is a personal safety decision. That distinction matters. In previous World Cup controversies, many supporters found themselves debating questions of ethics or politics. This time, some are asking a different question. Will I personally feel comfortable making this trip? And when people perceive a risk as direct and personal, their decisions tend to become much more definitive. Of course, perception is not the same as reality. Many fans will still travel. Many will experience no problems at all. And millions remain excited about the tournament. But the existence of these concerns alone is enough to influence conversations around the event. Because whether those fears are justified or exaggerated, they affect how people make decisions. And that may be one of the most important lessons of all. Sometimes a tournament is shaped not only by what happens, but by what people believe could happen. Yet safety and immigration represent only one piece of the larger picture. Even among supporters who are not worried about travel restrictions or border procedures, another concern has been steadily gaining attention. And unlike immigration policy, this issue affects almost everyone. It is the question of accessibility, or, more specifically, the price of attending the World Cup itself. If safety concerns cause some supporters to hesitate because of perceived risks, the second concern is causing many others to pause for a different reason: the cost. For World Cup 2026, FIFA is using a dynamic pricing model. In simple terms, ticket prices are not fixed. They rise and fall based on market demand. From an economic perspective, this is nothing new. Airlines have used it for years. Hotels use it. Concerts and major entertainment events often use it as well. But football is not just another industry. For millions of supporters, the World Cup is more than a product. It is a symbol, a tradition, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And when ticket prices begin moving according to demand, some fans start to feel that the tournament is being optimized for revenue rather than accessibility. Many supporters say they planned their budgets months, sometimes years, in advance. They calculated travel expenses, accommodation costs, food and transportation. But when they finally entered the ticketing system, the prices they encountered were often higher than they expected. At the same time, discounted ticket categories represent only a small portion of the total capacity available for each match. That reality has led many fans to ask a simple question: how accessible is the World Cup meant to be? What makes this issue important is not merely the numbers themselves. It is the feeling behind them. Because once supporters begin to feel that they are viewed primarily as customers rather than participants in a global football celebration, the relationship between organizers and fans begins to change. Not everyone opposes dynamic pricing. Many people argue that it reflects basic market principles. Others point out that demand for the World Cup has always exceeded supply. But even among those who understand the economic logic, questions remain. Who is the World Cup serving first? Corporate partners and premium buyers? Or the loyal supporters who have followed the tournament across generations? That question sits at the heart of the debate. And when concerns about affordability are combined with concerns about travel and personal security, the conversation becomes far more complex than a single controversy. What begins to emerge is a broader discussion about the identity of the tournament itself. Because beneath the arguments about ticket prices and border policies lies an even bigger question. A question about the values that the World Cup is supposed to represent. And that leads directly to the third concern. If safety is a story about personal risk, and ticket prices are a story about accessibility, then the third concern reaches something deeper. The values that the World Cup is supposed to represent. For years, FIFA has publicly emphasized its commitment to messages of inclusion, diversity, and opposition to discrimination. Those messages have appeared on stadium banners, in global marketing campaigns, and in official statements delivered to audiences around the world. But during a recent tournament held in the United States, a small detail attracted significant attention. Anti-racism messaging that had previously been visible throughout the competition suddenly disappeared. Not modified, not reduced, removed. Later, similar messaging briefly returned during an international day dedicated to combating hatred. Then it disappeared again. For many observers, the issue was never the slogan itself. The issue was consistency. Because when an organization repeatedly presents certain values as central to its identity, yet appears to adjust how those values are displayed depending on the circumstances, questions inevitably begin to emerge. Are these principles truly foundational? Or are they flexible messages that change according to the environment? When journalists asked whether the decision was connected to the political climate of the host nation, the official responses remained broad and non-specific. There was no detailed explanation. No clear commitment, no direct clarification. And sometimes, silence can create more questions than a straightforward answer ever would. What makes this debate particularly interesting is that it is not a one-sided attack on FIFA. The organization continues to invest heavily in the development of football worldwide. It continues expanding tournaments and creating opportunities for more nations to participate on the global stage. And because FIFA possesses enormous influence and resources, expectations surrounding its actions are equally high. That is why moments of ambiguity matter. When uncertainty appears at the level of values, the discussion often moves beyond a single decision. It becomes a conversation about credibility, about trust, about whether actions and messaging remain aligned. And once a debate reaches that stage, people are no longer arguing about one policy, one statement, or one event. They are questioning something much larger, the legitimacy of the narrative itself, which is exactly why the controversy surrounding World Cup 2026 feels different from many previous debates. To understand why, we need to look back at a recent event that revealed just how quickly public perception can shift when trust begins to weaken. To understand why the debate surrounding World Cup 2026 feels different, we need to look back at World Cup 2022 in Qatar. That tournament also faced intense criticism before kickoff. Questions were raised about labor conditions. Human rights concerns dominated headlines. There were heated discussions about local laws, culture, and social policies. The atmosphere leading into the tournament was highly controversial. Yet there was one crucial difference. Most of the arguments surrounding Qatar were moral debates. Fans found themselves asking a specific question. Should I support a tournament being held in a country that has become the subject of so much controversy? For many people, it was a choice between personal principles and their love of football. Some disagreed with the policies of the host nation. Some openly criticized them. But if they wanted to attend, they generally could. The risk they were weighing was largely reputational or ideological. World Cup 2026 introduces a different calculation for some supporters. The question is no longer simply, do I agree with this? Instead, it becomes, can I actually go? Will I encounter problems when I arrive? Will I feel safe throughout the experience? That shift from moral debate to perceived personal risk changes the nature of the conversation. Moral disagreements tend to create discussion. People argue. They exchange opinions. They defend competing viewpoints. The debate may be intense, but it remains a debate. Personal risk often produces something else. A decision. Not booking the ticket. Not making travel arrangements. Not committing to the trip at all. And once enough people begin making those decisions, the impact extends beyond social media discussions and opinion pieces. It starts appearing in behavior, in purchasing patterns, in attendance plans, in the way fans talk about the tournament months before it begins. That is why this conversation cannot be reduced to a few viral hashtags. The more significant question is whether these concerns are influencing real-world choices. Because when emotions remain online, they often fade. But when emotions begin changing behavior, they become much harder to ignore. This is what has captured the attention of many observers. Not necessarily the criticism itself, but the possibility that criticism may be translating into action. And that leads to the next stage of the story. Because there are now signs that some of these shifts may be appearing in measurable ways. Which raises an even larger question. Are we witnessing a temporary wave of anxiety fueled by headlines and social media? Or are we seeing the early stages of a genuine change in how fans view the World Cup itself? In the age of social media, online outrage is nothing unusual. A hashtag can explode within hours. A reaction video can attract millions of views overnight. And just as often, those waves of attention disappear as quickly as they arrived. What makes the conversation surrounding World Cup 2026 more interesting is the possibility that it may be moving beyond words and into behavior. Some reports suggest that international hotel bookings in certain host cities have fallen short of early expectations. Data from parts of the travel industry has indicated softer demand on some international routes connected to the tournament. Meanwhile, across supporter forums and social media communities, discussions about canceling trips, postponing plans, or deciding not to purchase tickets have become increasingly visible. Of course, it would be overly simplistic to attribute every change to a single cause. The global economy matters. Inflation matters. Rising living costs matter. Exchange rate fluctuations matter. Travel decisions are influenced by many factors at the same time. But when concerns about safety, affordability, and values begin appearing together within the same conversation, they can create a cumulative effect. And that effect may start influencing consumer behavior. This is where the difference between a debate and a genuine shift becomes important. A debate changes what people say. A shift changes what people do. When supporters begin adjusting their travel plans, delaying purchases, or reconsidering attendance altogether, the discussion moves beyond opinions and enters the realm of decisions. And once behavior starts changing, a different question emerges. The question is no longer, what are people saying? Instead, it becomes, where could this lead? Because history shows that major institutions rarely face their greatest challenges when criticism first appears. They face them when enough individuals quietly begin making different choices. And whether that is truly happening with World Cup 2026 remains the central question. One that becomes even more interesting when we step back and look at the bigger picture. So what does all of this actually mean? Are we witnessing a genuine crisis surrounding World Cup 2026? Or are we simply seeing the kind of turbulence that every major global institution eventually experiences? There is no denying FIFA's influence. It remains the most powerful organization in world football. It invests billions of dollars into infrastructure and development programs. It continues expanding the tournament, creating opportunities for more nations to participate on the biggest stage in the sport. And despite the controversies, the World Cup still possesses a level of global appeal that very few events can match. But trust is not measured by revenue. A tournament can break financial records. It can attract massive sponsorship deals. It can generate extraordinary viewership numbers. Yet, if a portion of its supporters begin feeling that they are no longer at the center of the story, that is a signal worth paying attention to. Safety, accessibility, core values. Taken together, these three issues have become a measure of the relationship between football's governing bodies and the fans who give the sport its meaning. Perhaps everything will work out. Perhaps, once the opening whistle blows, most of these debates will fade into the background. Football has a remarkable ability to bring people together and redirect attention back to the game itself. But it is also possible that this moment is forcing the sport to confront a deeper question. Who is the World Cup really for? Because every great tournament depends on more than stadiums, sponsors, and television contracts. It depends on the emotional connection between the event and the people who follow it. And that connection is built on trust. Now we would like to hear from you. If you have followed football for years, do you feel that something is changing around the World Cup? Do you think these concerns represent a temporary media cycle? Or could they be signs of a larger shift in how fans view the tournament? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy thoughtful discussions about football and the stories behind the game, be sure to subscribe and join us for future videos. Because sometimes the most important stories in football are not the ones happening on the pitch. They are the ones unfolding around it.